Did Meghan Markle just erase Prince Harry from their son's birth certificate, then drop the most brutal truth of all? It began not with a public statement or a tabloid headline, but with a whisper. A document quietly filed, a bureaucratic adjustment that on the surface appeared mundane, a revision to a birth certificate. In a world where headlines are forged out of thin air and rumors are currency, this wasn't just a change of ink on parchment. It was a time bomb ticking beneath the foundations of a royal legacy. The name being erased? Prince Harry. The paper in question? The official birth record of his firstborn son, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. Before we continue, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. For the British monarchy, appearances are everything. Protocols, titles, bloodlines, they're not merely symbolic. They're the structural beams of an empire that has withstood global wars, political upheavals, and centuries of scandal. So when reports surfaced that Meghan Markle had attempted to remove Prince Harry's name from their son's birth documents, alarm bells rang across every hallway of Buckingham Palace. But the shock did not end there. Insiders claim Prince Harry didn't learn about the name removal from Meghan herself. He didn't read about it in an internal memo or receive a quiet warning from his PR team. No, he found out the way millions did, through the brutal glare of the media. British tabloids seized the story with ferocity. Online news outlets lit up with headlines that sounded more like a royal takedown than routine reporting. Meghan seeks legal amendment to Archie's birth record, Prince Harry's name removed? And just like that, the House of Windsor was engulfed in another blaze of scandal. But this was different. This wasn't a wardrobe malfunction, a leaked private call, or a poorly phrased speech. This struck at the very essence of Prince Harry's role. Not as a working royal, not even as a husband, but as a father. The media called it a legal move. The palace called it a betrayal. But what came next made everything before it feel like child's play. According to sources inside the Sussex household, that night was one of emotional carnage. Harry confronted Meghan after storming out of a private meeting with his aides. They argued behind locked doors for hours, so loudly that even security detail outside reportedly heard the yelling. And in the heat of that confrontation, as the emotional dam broke and truth twisted into fury, Meghan allegedly dropped the most devastating line Prince Harry may ever hear. "You're not even the biological father." The air didn't just leave the room. It left the nation. Suddenly, what seemed like a bureaucratic oddity had taken on the dimensions of a Greek tragedy. In a matter of hours, the world went from asking, why was his name removed, to was his name ever supposed to be there at all? It became more than just a story about birth certificates. It was now about trust, betrayal, and the identity of a child born under the lens of global scrutiny. Royal watchers and media analysts began to dig into timelines, photos, even old interviews, searching for signs they had missed, inconsistencies that now felt prophetic. Some asked, had Meghan been preparing for this moment all along? Others wondered, had Harry ever asked the questions he needed to? This is not just a story of a legal document. It's a story of two people, once seen as the bright, modern future of the monarchy, now embroiled in a scandal that could rewrite royal history. And at the heart of it, a question that cuts deeper than any title or crown ever could. Who is Archie's real father? This video will take you into the eye of that storm. We'll unpack the legal maneuver that set off a firestorm. We'll dissect insider accounts, explore timelines, revisit interviews, and examine the devastating psychological toll on Prince Harry. You'll hear from former palace staff, legal experts, psychologists, and those who have stood in Harry's shoes. This isn't speculation. This is a forensic breakdown of how a single document, one signature, shattered the illusion of unity between Harry and Meghan. We'll trace how a name crossed out in black ink became a stain on the royal family's future. Because make no mistake, this isn't just a marriage crumbling. This could be the unraveling of a royal bloodline itself. And yet, what drives a woman to take such an explosive step? Is Meghan Markle a calculating strategist navigating life on her terms? Or a woman pushed to the edge by a system she never trusted? Is Harry the loyal father who believed in love, or the naive prince who never saw betrayal coming? And most importantly, what happens when the truth is no longer a matter of opinion, but a matter of DNA? Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you won't just be watching another royal scandal. You'll understand why this one, more than any other, may be the most dangerous truth the monarchy has ever had to face. The controversy began quietly. On the surface, it looked like a simple administrative adjustment, something buried within the folds of civil service documentation. No press release, no formal announcement. Just a line item flagged in the Office of National Statistics, noticed by a low-level clerk, then picked up by a reporter who had been monitoring the royal birth records for anomalies. What emerged from that investigation would become the seed of one of the most controversial stories in modern royal history. At the center of it all was a birth certificate, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor's birth certificate, to be precise. When the document was first issued, it listed Prince Harry's name in full, His Royal Highness Henry Charles Albert David Duke of Sussex. Meghan was also listed under her full title, Rachel Meghan Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Everything seemed standard, in line with royal tradition and legal norms. Then came the bombshell. A new version of the document appeared with an official amendment request. Prince Harry's full royal title, his very name, had been removed. In its place, nothing. The field was left blank. What reason could there possibly be for a mother, even one as media-savvy as Meghan, to remove the name of her husband from their child's legal birth certificate? The explanation given by Meghan's team was tepid and vague, a procedural correction, they said. An effort to align the document with the family's preference for privacy and simplicity. Yet the palace had never requested it, nor had Harry, reportedly. In fact, according to multiple royal insiders, Prince Harry had no idea such a change had even been made. That detail, that Meghan allegedly moved to alter the legal document without consulting her husband, was what sent shockwaves through the entire monarchy. Former palace aides later revealed that the Queen's private secretary was informed of the amendment not through official channels, but via a leak to the press. By the time the story broke across British tabloids, it had already spread like wildfire on social media. Hashtags like #NameGate and #RoyalBetrayal began trending. The monarchy's inner circle, already walking a tightrope of public opinion following Harry and Meghan's departure from royal duties, now faced a new crisis, one that struck at the heart of the royal family's public image. Legal analysts jumped into the fray. Birth certificates, they argued, were not frivolous documents to be casually edited. In the UK, amending a birth record requires not only a valid reason, but proper documentation and approval. This isn't like editing a resume. It's a legally binding declaration of parentage. And that's precisely what made the removal so suspicious. What, exactly, was being erased? The palace went into lockdown mode. As is often the case, there was no official response, no comment on the record. But off the record, a very different story was emerging. One royal insider, speaking anonymously, claimed that Prince William was completely blindsided and disgusted when he saw the report. The Queen, according to this source, was shaken and appalled by what she perceived as a betrayal of the institution. Meanwhile, Prince Charles reportedly called his youngest son the moment the news broke. The call, however, went unanswered. Harry, it seemed, was in no mood to talk. That's because, insiders say, he had just discovered the change himself. After a royal aide showed him the newspaper article during a morning briefing in California. The story claimed that Meghan had requested the removal weeks prior and had done so under the justification of wanting to protect her family's independence from the crown. The reaction, according to one former staff member, was nothing short of explosive. He just went pale, the aide claimed. You could see the blood drain from his face. He looked like someone had punched him in the gut. It wasn't just that his name had been removed. It was the fact that no one had told him. This wasn't a couple choosing to present a united front. This wasn't a joint decision to simplify their lives or shield their child from the public eye. This was a unilateral move by Meghan, at least. That's how it was interpreted by Harry, the palace, and the press. The conspiracy theories came next. Speculation turned rampant. Why would a woman want to delete the father's name from her child's birth certificate? Was it about control? Autonomy? Or something deeper? Something darker? Online sleuths and royal watchers began digging through old interviews, past paparazzi photos, even comments made by Meghan during her Oprah interview. One particular line stood out, when she said that some people in the palace didn't want Archie to be a prince. Was this a veiled warning? A foreshadowing of a much bigger reveal? For her part, Meghan issued a formal statement via her legal representatives. It was cold, defensive, and pointedly ambiguous. She claimed the change was dictated by the palace, a claim that royal officials categorically denied. It was, they said, simply untrue. What made this controversy so volatile wasn't just the act, it was the implication. Removing Prince Harry's name from a legal document that affirms him as a father, and doing so without his knowledge suggested a breakdown of trust that went far beyond petty marital squabbles. This was legal documentation, the kind that lawyers use in custody battles, estate planning, and paternity disputes. And that's when the whisper started. Insiders began to suggest that Meghan's move might not have been just about symbolism or independence. It might have been a legal prelude to something much more personal, much more painful. Something that would rock Prince Harry to his core and open the floodgates to a firestorm of royal reckoning. Because if his name didn't belong on the birth certificate, some asked, did it belong there at all? The sun hadn't fully risen over Montecito when Prince Harry's world was irrevocably altered. Nestled within the luxury estate he shared with Meghan Markle, Harry was reportedly in the middle of his routine, a quiet morning with his son, a warm drink in hand, and plans for a scheduled Zoom call with the Archewell Foundation team. What he didn't expect was to be handed an iPad by one of his assistants, face tightened with unease. A news alert glared from the screen. Meghan requests removal of Prince Harry's name from Archie's birth certificate. The words didn't register at first. He blinked, scrolled, and reread the headline. Below it, a clipped excerpt detailed the bureaucratic change, published with copies of the original and amended documents. His name had been removed. His Royal Highness Henry Charles Albert David Duke of Sussex was no longer on the record. For a man raised in the stiff tradition of British discretion, Prince Harry's reaction was reportedly uncharacteristically visceral. Witnesses say the cup in his hand shattered as it hit the marble kitchen floor. An eerie silence followed. Then, interruption. He stormed through the estate, demanding answers, phone in hand, calling Meghan's number repeatedly, but each call went to voicemail. What followed next, according to palace insiders and those close to the Sussex camp, was a chaotic blend of disbelief, fury, and emotional unraveling. Harry allegedly called Jason Knopf, his former communications secretary, not to ask for advice but to scream an outlet for a pain he hadn't yet processed. Why would she do this? He reportedly shouted. Why wouldn't she tell me? The answer didn't come easily, and it certainly didn't come from Meghan. Instead, Harry turned to his legal team, demanding immediate clarification. His team, having been blindsided as well, scrambled to contact UK authorities to confirm the change. Within hours, Harry had confirmation. The change was real, and the request had indeed originated from Meghan's legal representatives weeks earlier. The press had beaten his own household to the punch. To understand the magnitude of this moment, one must grasp Harry's relationship with the media. His entire life had been defined by cameras, flashbulbs, and carefully spun headlines. From the heartbreak of his mother's death, chased by paparazzi in Paris, to the tabloid scrutiny of his wild youth, Harry had lived under a microscope. When he met Meghan, he believed he'd found a partner who understood the cruelty of fame. Instead, on this day, he realized he had been left behind by the very person he thought was in his corner. The irony was cruel. Harry, the man who'd once sued tabloids for breaching his privacy, had now discovered the most personal betrayal of his life from a headline. The emotional collapse was reportedly immediate. He locked himself in his study, refused food, and canceled all calls. According to a close friend, Harry was heard muttering the same sentence over and over again. Why now? Why this way? By mid-afternoon, Meghan returned home, walking straight into a hurricane. Staff said the argument could be heard across the grounds. No royal etiquette. No stage-managed silence. Just raw, unfiltered confrontation between a man feeling betrayed and a woman standing on the edge of an emotional cliff. What were you thinking? Harry reportedly yelled. Why didn't you tell me first? Meghan's response, though undocumented officially, was relayed by more than one insider. You never asked. That statement, simple but piercing, may have been the turning point. The idea that Harry hadn't even thought to verify or question something as serious as a legal document concerning his own child spoke volumes. It revealed a fracture in their relationship, a chasm where communication once existed. According to sources, the fight escalated quickly. Harry accused Meghan of using their child for a narrative. Meghan accused him of still being chained to the monarchy. And then came the words that would obliterate the very ground beneath him. You're not even the biological father. No elaboration. No explanation. Just the sentence, hurled like a dagger. Silence followed. According to the household staff, Harry stumbled back and collapsed into a chair. Meghan left the room. That was the last anyone saw of either of them for the rest of the night. The implications of such a claim cannot be overstated. It wasn't just a matter of betrayal. It wasn't even just a matter of truth. It was a collapse of identity. Everything Harry had fought for, leaving the royal family, moving to the United States, protecting Meghan and Archie from the press, rebuilding a new life, all of it had been grounded in fatherhood. To be told, in the most violent moment possible, that he may not even be Archie's real father, wasn't just an emotional assault. It was existential annihilation. Meanwhile, the world watched. Social media exploded. Theories ranged from plausible to absurd. Some speculated it was just a fight, an offhand threat spoken in rage. Others believed Meghan had known the truth all along and had simply waited for the right moment to unleash it. Still more believed it was all part of a greater plan, one that involved legal strategy, custody maneuvering, and eventual divorce. In the wake of the fallout, Harry disappeared from the public eye for days. Scheduled appearances were canceled. Foundation work was postponed. Rumors of a nervous breakdown began to swirl. Some media outlets claimed he was being treated by a private therapist. Others suggested that his father, King Charles, had attempted to reach out, only to be rebuffed. For Meghan, the silence was just as deafening. Her PR team released no statement, no Instagram posts, no interviews. It was as though both sides had agreed to a ceasefire, a moment to breathe, to regroup. But those closest to them knew that the real battle was only just beginning. The confrontation between Meghan Markle and Prince Harry on the night the media broke the birth certificate amendment story wasn't just another domestic disagreement. It was seismic, a collision of secrets, expectations, and emotional trauma years in the making. The carefully constructed walls around their marriage, already showing cracks, finally gave way to a flood of anger, betrayal, and heartbreaking revelations. Sources close to the couple said that after Meghan returned to the Montecito home that evening, she found Harry pacing in the study. His eyes were bloodshot, not from lack of sleep, but from disbelief. He had spent the entire day in a mental spiral, replaying every moment from the last few years, questioning everything. From Archie's first bath to the birth room memories, nothing felt real anymore. His trust, something that had been slowly eroded by both his royal past and the trauma of his mother's death, was now in pieces. "You could have just told me," Harry reportedly said when Meghan entered the room. But the calmness in his voice masked something darker: devastation. Not rage. Not confusion. Something colder: emotional detachment. Meghan, holding her handbag like a shield, stood silent for a moment, as if weighing her response. Then, she placed it down and said, "I didn't think you'd understand." Those words, though measured, were like fuel on a fire. "Understand what?" Harry snapped. "That my name's being removed from my son's birth certificate? That the entire world now thinks I'm some irrelevant sperm donor?" She attempted to clarify, suggesting that it was about independence. About freeing Archie from the scrutiny of the royal label, from the politics of bloodline legitimacy. But that logic collapsed instantly in Harry's mind. The removal of his name wasn't a rebellion against the monarchy, it was a rejection of him. "What are you not telling me?" he demanded, voice rising. And that's when it happened. According to two insiders who claimed to have overheard the altercation through the hallway, Meghan's voice trembled slightly as she said the words, "You're not even the biological father." Silence descended. It wasn't just a sentence. It was a death blow to everything Harry thought he knew about his family, his marriage, and himself. His knees buckled, and he slumped into a nearby chair. Meghan didn't rush to console him. She simply stood, arms crossed, eyes distant. "You're lying," Harry muttered after a long pause. "Say you're lying." But she didn't. She only repeated, "There are things you don't understand. Things I was trying to protect you from." He laughed, a humorless, broken sound. "Protect me? From what? The truth? Or your mistakes?" That exchange spiraled into hours of raised voices, accusations, sobbing, and emotional breakdowns. Staff members outside were instructed to keep their distance, but security teams on duty noted the tension so severe that one called a supervisor to be on standby for potential intervention. According to one account, objects were thrown, not at each other, but out of frustration. A framed photograph of the family, one taken during Archie's first birthday, was later found shattered in the hallway. As the confrontation dragged into the early morning hours, Meghan reportedly tried to regain control of the narrative. She claimed the paternity issue had always haunted her, that a brief period of separation before their wedding had opened questions she didn't dare answer. There had been another man, she admitted. Someone she had been close to in Toronto, during her Suits days. But it didn't mean anything, she insisted. Harry, in disbelief, asked whether she had ever considered telling him before. "When we left the royal family? When we moved here? When we named him after my mother's family?" But Meghan only said, I didn't think it would matter. That, more than anything, broke him. Because to Harry, fatherhood was the one sacred thing he had left. After walking away from his military duties, royal titles, family traditions, and the very country of his birth, the one thing that gave him purpose was Archie. Every story he had told on interviews, every book chapter he had written, every fight he had with his family, every choice had been justified with, "I'm doing this for my wife and child." And now, at the center of his reason for existing, was a question he never thought he'd ask: am I even a father? By 4 a.m., Meghan had retreated to the guest room, reportedly after a final exchange in which Harry asked if she'd be willing to take a DNA test. Her response was not a no. It was worse. Would it change anything? That question cut to the core. Because for Harry, it would change everything. And the fact that she didn't seem to understand that, or worse, didn't said it anyway, made the wound even deeper. The following day, Harry was visibly unwell. According to a private chef who worked the estate at the time, breakfast went untouched. Curtains remained drawn. The staff was dismissed early, and Meghan didn't leave her room. Harry was seen sitting by the window for hours, staring out over the hills of Santa Barbara, holding Archie's baby monitor in his hand. Later, one of Harry's closest friends flew in from London to be with him. Described as a lifeline, the friend reportedly convinced Harry to seek medical support, suggesting he was showing signs of emotional trauma bordering on breakdown. It would take days before either of them would speak again beyond logistical necessities. And even then, their conversations were cold, calculated, and empty of the affection they once held. From that night on, nothing was the same between them. Not their marriage, not their dynamic as parents, and certainly not their public image. In the days and weeks following Meghan Markle's bombshell revelation that Prince Harry might not be the biological father of Archie, the question that reverberated across royal circles, media outlets, and public forums was stark, simple, and chilling. If not Harry, then who? Speculation, of course, is the currency of celebrity culture. But this wasn't your average whisper campaign. This was a potential rewriting of royal lineage, and the implications were more than social, they were constitutional. If Archie was not the biological son of Prince Harry, he would not be entitled to royal titles, privileges, or position in the line of succession. And that meant the future of the monarchy itself could be tangled in a scandal the likes of which it had never seen. To trace the possibility of another man, analysts, reporters, and curious onlookers began digging into Meghan's life before her marriage to Harry. The most immediate name to emerge from the shadows was Marcus Anderson. Marcus, a longtime friend of Meghan's, is a Canadian Soho House consultant known for his connections within elite social circles and his reputation as a discreet, charming fixer. He had been spotted with Meghan on multiple occasions during her time on Suits, was with her at the 2016 Invictus Games, the same event where she and Harry went public, and was widely believed to be instrumental in introducing the couple. Photos of Marcus and Meghan resurfaced. Their body language was analyzed with clinical precision. In some frames, they looked like close friends. In others, the intimacy, whether genuine or perceived, raised eyebrows. He had a protective stance, and she leaned into his presence in ways that didn't feel merely platonic. Then came Tyler Perry. Most of the public was introduced to Tyler in Meghan and Harry's own words during their infamous Oprah interview. Tyler had provided them with his private Beverly Hills estate when they left the UK, and even assigned his own security to protect them during a time when the royal family had cut them off. Meghan spoke of him as a guardian angel, someone who stepped up when everyone else had walked away. But soon, whispers began to twist that narrative. Was Tyler Perry just a benefactor, or something more? Journalists began uncovering odd patterns. Tyler and Meghan reportedly spoke on the phone daily during the height of her pregnancy. His estate became her safe haven, and insiders suggested that he was more than emotionally invested in her well-being. He was fiercely protective of her and Archie. What's more, there were curious inconsistencies. Birth records, for example, listed Meghan's place of birth as Los Angeles, and that was confirmed. But what had not been confirmed, despite repeated journalistic attempts, was the exact hospital where Archie was born. For most royals, the birth process is thoroughly documented. Window wing, media appearances, a hospital photo on the steps. None of that existed for Archie. Instead, there was only a vague press release, carefully managed images, and blurry timelines. Some speculated, had Meghan deliberately kept the birth secret to mask the identity of the father? Was there a surrogate involved? Or had she given birth privately to avoid a paper trail? Back to the suspects, Marcus and Tyler weren't the only names floated. There were whispers of a third man, a British businessman Meghan reportedly dated briefly between her divorce from Trevor Engelson and her introduction to Harry. His name never made it into public headlines, but some claimed he was a behind-the-scenes donor to one of Meghan's early philanthropic events in Toronto. If their relationship had lingered behind closed doors even as she began courting Harry, it could explain the timing confusion that now haunted the paternity narrative. Adding fuel to the fire, former acquaintances from Meghan's Toronto social scene came forward anonymously to suggest she had a history of strategic dating. According to one anonymous former friend, Meghan always understood leverage. She knew who had influence, who had power, and she wasn't shy about aligning herself with them. It was always subtle, never obvious, but very intentional. Of course, none of these claims were substantiated with hard evidence. There was no confirmed DNA test, no official denial or admission from Meghan's camp. But the silence was deafening. Each day that passed without clarification gave oxygen to theories that would otherwise have died quietly. And Harry's silence was even louder. Normally, a man would jump to defend his wife, his marriage, his role as a father. But Harry disappeared. No public appearances, no interviews, no statements. Those close to him said he was processing. But to many, it looked like confirmation of the worst-case scenario, that he believed it. Meanwhile, tabloids began tracking down timelines, scrutinizing travel logs, mapping out every time Meghan and Harry had been apart during their courtship. One discovery was particularly troubling. During a reported off period early in their relationship, long before the engagement, Meghan had been seen traveling alone to Toronto and back. Around the same time, she had gone dark on social media, stopped attending public events, and reportedly deleted several private photos from her phone. A tech journalist claimed to have spoken with a former staff member who helped wipe Meghan's iCloud account shortly before her engagement announcement. The reason, he claimed, was privacy. But in hindsight, it looked like something else, erasure. Among the general public, reactions were split. Some believed the rumors were cruel and sexist, just another attack on a woman of color who dared marry into the oldest monarchy in Europe. Others felt vindicated. From day one, they had claimed Meghan was calculating, manipulative, and playing a long game. But the truth remained elusive. Still, the world couldn't look away. And then came the final blow in this stage of the unraveling. A whistleblower, claiming to be a former member of a security team assigned to Meghan and Archie in California, said under anonymity that he once overheard Meghan on a call, muffled through a closed door, telling someone, "I had to make a choice. The truth or the illusion." Whether that quote is real or fabricated, it spread like wildfire. Commentators began writing opinion pieces about the Meghan illusion. Social media filled with memes juxtaposing photos of Harry holding Archie with captions like "father" or "fool." No one dared say it outright. Not the royal family. Not Harry. Not Meghan. But everyone knew what was at stake. Because at the center of all this noise, one boy remains, Archie. A child born into a storm he never asked for, carrying a last name that may not match his blood, being raised in the shadow of a scandal that could define his entire life. And the question that lingers, the one no one dares answer, but everyone whispers in private, is this. If Meghan knew the truth all along, why now? To understand why Meghan Markle may have tried to remove Prince Harry's name from Archie's birth certificate, and why she would deliver the devastating line, "You're not even the biological father," during a confrontation, one must look deeper than scandal. One must examine the layers of distrust, cultural divides, and personal trauma that have long hovered between Meghan and the British royal family like a storm cloud no press team could disperse. When Meghan first entered the royal fold in 2016, she was hailed by many as a breath of fresh air. She was biracial, American, divorced, and fiercely independent. She was everything the monarchy traditionally wasn't. And for a brief moment, that contrast seemed to signal progress, an evolution of the crown toward a more modern, inclusive future. But the honeymoon ended quickly. Within months of her engagement to Prince Harry, Meghan began to clash with the very institution she had entered. Reports leaked about her treatment of royal staff. Headlines accused her of being difficult, demanding, even a diva. Behind closed doors, sources say Meghan felt stifled, disrespected, and perhaps most importantly, mistrusted. Royal protocol isn't just about etiquette, it's about control. Every public appearance, every photo op, every announcement must be approved, vetted, and sometimes rewritten by a committee of palace advisors. For Meghan, A woman who had spent her adult life controlling her own brand and navigating Hollywood's cutthroat industry on her own terms. This level of micromanagement was suffocating. She reportedly told friends in private that she wasn't allowed to speak her truth and that she was being suffocated by tradition. While Prince Harry had been born into that structure and accepted it as his reality, even if resentfully, Meghan saw it as a hostile takeover of her identity. The situation deteriorated after her marriage to Harry in 2018. Meghan began to realize just how entrenched the hierarchy was. She was not just marrying a man, she was marrying an institution. One with centuries of internal politics, rivalries, and unspoken codes of conduct. Within months of becoming the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan was already viewed as a disruption, and she knew it. In private conversations, Meghan expressed fear that Archie would be treated the same way. Stripped of title, cast to the sidelines, seen as less than. She often pointed to an unnamed royal family member who, according to her, expressed concern over how dark Archie's skin might be. That comment, revealed during the infamous Oprah interview, shocked the world and served as a turning point in how Meghan's relationship with the crown was publicly perceived. But behind the scenes, the damage had already been done. Meghan had begun to keep secrets, not just from the press, but from the institution itself. She reportedly bypassed palace media advisors and started arranging her own interviews and communications. She distanced herself from royal family events and allegedly made decisions about her pregnancy and medical care without informing palace officials. For the royal family, this was insubordination. For Meghan, it was survival. And that sense of survival may very well be at the root of her attempt to remove Harry's name from Archie's birth certificate. According to legal experts familiar with royal protocols, removing a father's name, especially one as public as Prince Harry, from an official document without his consent isn't just unusual. It's a potential act of legal positioning. In custody cases, birth certificates matter. If a couple divorces and the father's name is absent or contested on the child's birth record, it can influence legal proceedings in certain jurisdictions. Meghan, aware of this, may have been preparing for a scenario in which she would need sole legal control over Archie. But why prepare for a legal separation from Harry if their marriage was still intact? Insiders believe Meghan never truly trusted that the royal family, or perhaps even Harry himself, would remain loyal to her if the marriage became inconvenient. Her experience with the crown had taught her that nothing was more important than the family name, and if push came to shove, she believed she would be sacrificed to protect it. So she began laying the groundwork. She isolated. She relied increasingly on outside allies like Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, and Marcus Anderson, people who owed no loyalty to the crown. She retained her own legal counsel, often operating independently of the Sussexes' shared public relations teams. She made plans to relocate, taking up temporary residence in Canada before settling in California, all while still officially a working royal. This is not the behavior of a woman who feels protected. It's the strategy of a woman preparing for war. And Harry, caught between two worlds, began to fracture. He loved Meghan. That was never in question. But he also carried decades of royal programming, a lifetime of loyalty to the monarchy, to duty, to legacy. Meghan saw those instincts as dangerous. She reportedly warned him multiple times that the palace will never protect you, that he needed to think like a father, not a prince. But here's where the real tragedy begins. What if Meghan's deep-rooted mistrust extended so far that it caused her to question even Harry's ability to remain loyal to Archie? What if, in her mind, removing his name wasn't just about legal maneuvering, but about protecting her child from a system she saw as inherently hostile? Such paranoia, whether justified or not, can drive even the most rational person to extreme decisions. And in Meghan's case, the trauma of her treatment by the royals, the media, and even segments of the public could have triggered a need for absolute control. By the time Harry found out about the birth certificate change, it was too late. The document had already been processed. The media had already published it. The damage was done. And Meghan's response to Harry's fury, that he might not be the biological father, may have been less of a confession and more of a defense mechanism. A way to reclaim control in a moment where everything seemed to be spiraling out of it. Of course, that doesn't absolve the impact. Harry was left reeling, questioning not only the legitimacy of his fatherhood, but the very foundation of his marriage. For a man who had already left everything behind for love, his homeland, his title, his family, this was an unthinkable betrayal. And yet, from Meghan's perspective, It may have felt like the only way to survive. Long before she became the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle understood the power of media. She knew how to control a narrative, how to speak without saying too much, and, perhaps most critically, how to disappear just long enough to build anticipation. In the entertainment world, this is a skill. In the royal sphere, it's an existential threat. When Meghan's attempt to remove Prince Harry's name from Archie's birth certificate hit the headlines, her reaction was not public outrage or swift denial. It was silence. Calculated, echoing silence. Not a single post from her social accounts. No statement through Archewell. No TV appearance or podcast explanation. And that absence itself became a kind of message. Because silence, when expertly wielded, can be more powerful than any rebuttal. But behind that silence was a network of loyal allies and media consultants who had long helped Meghan craft her public persona. From the early days of her career on Suits to her globally broadcast wedding to a prince, Meghan had mastered the rhythm of media cycles. She knew how to time an announcement for maximum impact, how to redirect negative attention, and how to use certain reporters, those sympathetic to her story, to release just enough counter-narrative without her name attached to it. This is what began to happen in the days following the birth certificate scandal. First, friendly media outlets began publishing subtle defenses. Articles speculated that Meghan had no control over the registry process, that it was the palace who insisted on the change. The claim was presented not as fact, but as a possibility, an idea inserted into the public consciousness like a seed. The implication was clear. Meghan wasn't being deceptive, she was being framed. That defense, however, did not come from the palace. In fact, royal officials quickly pushed back. Off the record, they told reporters that the claim was categorically false, adding that all amendments of such nature must originate from the mother or legal guardian. This contradicted the narrative being floated in Meghan-friendly corners of the press. Then came the second wave, opinion pieces reframing Meghan's decision not as betrayal, but as empowerment. Why shouldn't a mother have control over her child's identity? They asked. Why is Meghan always blamed for decisions that other royal women make in silence? These were not random questions. They were carefully placed editorial pieces in major lifestyle and social justice outlets, reinforcing the idea that Meghan was not only misunderstood, she was a victim of structural injustice. And yet, the facts remained unaltered. The name on the certificate was changed. Prince Harry was reportedly unaware. The media broke the story before he ever saw the paperwork. To spin that into empowerment required narrative precision, and Meghan's team had no shortage of experience. Her communications director was a seasoned veteran in Hollywood publicity. Her legal advisors had previously handled celebrity cases involving invasion of privacy, intellectual property, and reputational harm. The machinery was already in place to reframe the controversy. But the challenge wasn't just PR, it was emotional credibility. Viewers of Meghan and Harry's Netflix documentary saw a woman deeply conscious of how she's perceived. She doesn't just react to criticism, she anticipates it. In one scene, she explains how she Googled the British national anthem to prepare for royal duties, highlighting her effort to assimilate. In another, she tears up discussing her miscarriage, evoking deep sympathy. These moments were not fake, but they were curated. The editing, the music, the camera angles, all served a broader narrative. Meghan wasn't just telling her story. She was shaping her myth. This same method was applied in the wake of the birth certificate backlash. Behind the scenes, her advisors carefully monitored public sentiment, targeting influencers, bloggers, and even minor celebrities to post vague but supportive messages. Mothers deserve privacy. The world is too harsh on Meghan. Let her live. Each post was part of a larger algorithmic play. Hashtags trended. Contrarian posts were swarmed with counter-comments. The goal wasn't to erase the scandal, it was to crowd it out with noise. And yet, there was one platform Meghan never truly conquered. British tabloids. Despite her lawsuits, her victory against the Mail on Sunday, and her efforts to control imagery and access, the British press remained ruthless. They interpreted her silence as guilt, her refusal to clarify as manipulation. Editorials accused her of hiding behind vague legal jargon. Others pointed to the timing. Why remove Harry's name now? Years after Archie's birth? Why not earlier? The implication was chilling, that Meghan's move was not just personal, but strategic. That she was preparing to legally and symbolically detach herself and her children from Prince Harry. This idea gained traction when royal insiders leaked that Meghan had quietly trademarked the names Archie and Lilibet under a new California-based foundation, separate from Archewell. The decision raised eyebrows. Was this a branding strategy or something more territorial? Even as her defenders rallied, the cracks in Meghan's image widened. Former friends from her pre-royal life surfaced with stories of her controlling behavior. One ex-colleague described her as obsessed with perception, adding that Meghan measured her worth by headlines, not relationships. Another stated that she didn't burn bridges, she torched them, and denied they ever existed. But perhaps the most damaging blow came from an unlikely source, a former senior aide to Meghan, who in a leaked message to a journalist stated she always thought she could outmaneuver the firm. She never thought she'd have to outmaneuver Harry. That quote, while unverifiable, resonated with a public already suspicious of Meghan's intentions. It reframed the entire situation, not as a woman betrayed by a system, but as a woman playing chess in a game where the pieces were real people. And what of Harry? In this media whirlwind, he remained silent, his absence speaking volumes. No social posts, no video messages, no birthday wishes publicly posted. He seemed to vanish into a fog of uncertainty. Observers noted that Meghan was now appearing more frequently alone, visiting women's charities, attending fundraisers, giving speeches about motherhood and female empowerment. The message was subtle but effective. I am standing strong, alone, if I must. But behind the scenes, legal experts suggested a different motive. By projecting strength and maternal dedication, Meghan was quietly preparing for a future custody narrative, one where Harry might not be the central parental figure. Which brings us back to the birth certificate. In the court of public opinion, removing Harry's name felt like betrayal. In the world of legal chess, it may have been the first move in a long game Meghan always intended to play. And if that's true, then the media manipulation isn't just about survival. It's about strategy. As the birth certificate scandal erupted and media speculation around Archie's paternity dominated headlines, the British royal family found itself in an all-too-familiar position, surrounded by chaos, yet trapped behind centuries-old walls of silence. This time, however, the stakes were different. This wasn't a tabloid drama about a wayward cousin or a controversial photo. This was a direct threat to the monarchy's integrity, its bloodline, its lineage, its future. The royal family's initial response was, as expected, no response at all. No public statements. No comment. Not even a carefully worded press release offering clarification or neutrality. And while that strategy had served the palace in past crises, such as Prince Andrew's scandals or Princess Diana's bombshell interviews, it quickly became clear that this situation was unlike any other. Because this time, it wasn't just about scandal. It was about legitimacy. Behind closed doors, the mood was reportedly one of fury, panic, and exhaustion. According to sources close to the palace, King Charles III was absolutely livid upon reading the media reports. He was in the middle of an official briefing at Clarence House when a senior aide slipped him a printout of the Daily Mail article. As he scanned the story, his jaw clenched. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The room fell into silence. For Charles, a man who had spent years rehabilitating his image after the Diana era, this was personal. He had supported Harry's decision to step away from royal duties, albeit reluctantly. He had provided financial assistance during the transition. He had even tried to maintain a line of communication with Meghan after Megxit. But now, with one legal move and one alleged sentence from Meghan, you're not even the biological father, the entire royal house was in jeopardy. The queen consort, Camilla, was reportedly more blunt in her reaction. According to a palace insider, she said to Charles, "I told you she'd burn it all down." That quote, repeated in hushed tones across royal circles, quickly became symbolic of the deep mistrust that had lingered behind Meghan's integration into the family. Meanwhile, Prince William's reaction was colder, more strategic. He saw the long-term implications immediately. As the direct heir to the throne, he understood that anything calling into question the legitimacy of royal children, even by association, was a constitutional threat. He summoned his communications team and, within hours, began orchestrating private briefings with trusted journalists. While no statement would be issued publicly, select reporters were given access to anonymous palace sources who conveyed one clear message: Prince William and the senior royals were blindsided and deeply concerned. Behind the scenes, William's team went into damage control mode. Meetings were held with constitutional experts to assess the legal implications of Archie's amended birth certificate. Could this affect Archie's position in the line of succession? What would happen if Harry and Meghan divorced and the children's paternity was formally challenged? What precedent would this set? Palace lawyers began consulting legal historians to determine whether any similar incident had occurred in the past. They found nothing. In the history of British royalty, no senior royal had ever had their name removed from a child's official birth record. It was unprecedented. It was uncharted legal territory. And the palace had no script. Princess, and known for her bluntness and steel resolve, reportedly voiced what many inside the institution were thinking but dared not say aloud. She's daring us to react. And we won't. But that doesn't mean we'll forget. Her words, delivered during a private family conversation at Windsor, captured the royal strategy: remain silent, do not legitimize the scandal, but prepare for long-term consequences. Because in the monarchy, memory is long and retaliation often comes quietly and without warning. Prince Edward and Sophie, the Earl and Countess of Wessex, remained publicly disengaged but privately incensed. Sophie, once seen as a potential mentor to Meghan during her early days in the family, had since cooled the relationship. According to a former aide, Sophie had tried to guide Meghan during her first year, warning her that the media will never be your friend unless you let the family be. Meghan, allegedly, replied, "I don't want either." That moment now seemed prophetic. As Meghan's silence continued and Harry remained absent from public view, the pressure mounted. Members of the House of Lords began whispering about the implications of a potential illegitimate heir being associated with royal titles. Political commentators on right-wing British networks openly questioned whether the monarchy needed to clean house and revisit succession laws to prevent further embarrassment. The Prime Minister's office issued no statement, but insiders claimed that briefings were conducted at the highest levels. If the monarchy collapsed under the weight of its own scandal, the constitutional structure of the UK could be thrown into disarray. What had begun as a personal issue now carried geopolitical weight. Within the inner sanctum of Buckingham Palace, the Queen's advisors began crafting contingency strategies. One included the quiet removal of Archie and Lilibet's titles in the event that DNA rumors gained legal traction. Another plan involved freezing any public funds allocated to the Sussex children's security and ceremonial costs. A more extreme scenario was discussed: stripping Harry of his remaining honorary military titles and removing him from the Privy Council. King Charles, while initially reactive, began to shift toward a strategic posture. He summoned his private secretary, Sir Clive Alderton, and requested a full audit of the monarchy's legal exposure should the scandal escalate. According to leaked information, Charles ordered all communications with the Sussexes to be routed through legal channels only. But perhaps the most telling sign of the palace's shifting stance came when the royal social media pages stopped including Harry or Meghan in official posts. Even on anniversaries or holidays, there were no mentions. No curated throwback photos. No nods to Archie or Lilibet. It was a silent erasure, a digital confirmation that the Sussexes were now fully outside the royal tent. And yet, behind this ice-cold strategy was an institution on edge. The birth certificate scandal had revealed not only the fragility of Harry and Meghan's marriage, but the monarchy's vulnerability to modern warfare, legal, digital, and emotional. The royals had always survived through discretion, tradition, and unity. But what happens when one of their own no longer plays by the rules? What happens when the scandal isn't external, but born from within? The royal family, ever composed, ever silent, had made its choice. It would not fight Meghan publicly. It would not debate paternity or identity on the front page of newspapers. But it would prepare. It would document. It would remember. Because in the House of Windsor, revenge is never loud. In a shocking twist that's left the monarchy reeling, reports now claim Prince Harry only discovered Meghan's attempt to remove his name from Archie's birth papers through media leaks, not from Meghan herself. And when he confronted her in a fiery confrontation behind closed doors, what she allegedly said next stunned even his closest aides: "You're not even the biological father." Tonight, we dive deep into the legal documents, insider testimony, and what this could mean for royal lineage, public trust, and a family already pushed to the brink. Stay with us. What you're about to hear may change everything.